Hey guys, Chad Smith here. I'm here to talk about my interview that I had with my collegiate athlete, who just happened to finish up his senior season of football. He was a long snapper for the team. He plays at a Division II college. He had played college, or he played football for his whole collegiate career. And He was a specialist or a long snapper. And if you don't know what that means, that'll explain a little bit the video that's on the screen right now. I'm going to play that. It's about a minute long, and I hope it gives you a better understanding or an idea of what a long snapper is and what their duties are. Before we get into that, a little bit what I spoke with my athlete about was I started off asking him about his rituals or maybe his pre-game, pre-practice habits and what he does to get himself focused and get himself mentally prepared for a game or for a practice, and if they're the same. The next thing I asked my athlete about was, their goals, maybe their personal goals, their team goals, maybe what some of his teammates had for him, maybe their goals for him. The next thing I asked him about was his relationships with the coaches, and maybe with the teammates, and what his teammates' relationships were with him, and how that built the team dynamic and how that made them feel overall. The next thing I asked him about was his relaxation techniques. Whenever things happened during the game, maybe some anxiety started creeping in, or he started getting some self-doubt possibly in practice or before practice, or things were going on outside of school or outside of practice, I mean. What were some of his ideas and techniques that helped him get over that? And finally, he did sustain a little bit of an injury. It was minor. It did cause him to miss a few practices, or a few lifts rather. And how he overcame that and what his mental state was with that. Before we go any further, I just want to play this clip really quick. I hope you're able to hear it. I hope it comes out pretty well. But just to give you an idea of what a long snapper is, what their duties are, and just how important of a role they might possibly play on a football team.
For me, it's kind of a family tradition. My dad's a football coach. My grandpa did it in college. He did it in college. I did in college. Both my sisters can snap. My uncles can snap. So for me, I could do that before I could even throw. I'm snapping at 8 yards on field goals and 14, 15 yards on punts. There it is. And I'm doing that in like 0.72, 0.75 seconds. You'll get a consistent snap if you start and your motion goes through and everything is the same every time. It's just repetition after repetition. I think even just as specialists in general, we're all expected to step on the field every time and be perfect. And if we're not, oh, you're garbage. Oh, you're just a kicker. You're just a snapper. You don't do anything. It doesn't matter. But yet, when the game comes down to a field goal, who you begging to do his job? It's one of those things. It's you hate us until you need us. And I'm perfectly fine with it. If you don't know who I am, I've done a really good job. If you know who I am, it's been a bad day for me.
So I hope that gives you a better idea or understanding of the role of a long snapper. They have to snap the ball, 45 feet on a punt, and maybe 7, 8 yards on a field goal. It has to be very precise of where it hits the punter or the holder for whichever snap they're doing it for, and it has to be very quick. I don't know if you heard the guy from the Jets, the snapper for the Jets. He said about 0.72 seconds is where how he needs to snap at 15 yards. So there's quite a bit there. And a specialist on a football team only has maybe 4 to 10 plays a game, just depending. So they're expected to do their jobs perfect. So I asked my athlete what were some of your pregame rituals or some of your pre-practice rituals, and he said they were different. He said he never had time before practice to go through his pregame rituals, but he would like to. Some of these pregame rituals were listening to the same playlist that he made specifically for game day. They were going and doing the same stretch routine before he went out on the field to warm up. Once he actually got on the field, he would go through some of his own checks and through some of his own technique to make sure that all that was correct. And I asked him, was there ever a game that you weren't able to do these? And he said no. He said he always had plenty of time. I also asked him, if he felt that he were able to do these before practice, do you think that he would have changed anything? And he says yes. He says he feels like sometimes the stretches were too long, or sometimes they, maybe it was just all a mental thing. But according to some research, it's, we've learned that, it's okay to have these rituals, but we just need to pick and choose which ones are going to better influence our ability and our performance, and which ones are really just a waste of time. So that's one thing that he didn't get around to. The next topic was goals. Was my first question. What was your goal for yourself for your senior year? And his goal was to be all conference as a long snapper. Sadly, that did not happen. And I asked him, I said, well, what were the goals leading up to this goal, or was this the only one? And he told me that this was the only goal that he had. So right there, we have a performance goal, and it is really just from the outcome of the season. But yet there were nothing that that was going to lead him up to that. And I asked him, how do you obtain an all conference long snapping title? And he said, it's voted on. And he said, I knew I had to be perfect every time I got on the field. Well, that's great, but what could he have done to become perfect? Was it go and snap 100 balls at practice every day? Was it go and make sure his feet was aligned correctly at practice and make sure that he went through that correctly? Or what were things leading up to that? And what we've also learned is that the research shows that whenever you have smaller goals that help you attain the bigger goal, or the end goal, then most of the time it's you have a better percentage of acquiring that and finishing that. My next topic with him was relaxation. What is your relaxation technique? What if was there ever a point in time in the game where stuff hit the fan, or possibly you didn't do your job as well as you should have, and some anxiety started to set in? What was your technique for that? And he said that he would seclude himself on the sideline. He would go over where nobody was at. He said he would sit down, refocus, really clear his mind. I did ask him if there was possibly a happy place that we learned about that he went to really clear his mind. He said no. He said he really just wanted to focus up and pay attention to his cues, to his practice, to his technique, and go out there and be better next time and focus on the next play. Which we also know that if there's an outside source or an outside happy place, that helps us get over this anxiety and helps us forget about what possibly has just happened, and to help us perform better in the future, which is be the next play for him. So that could have been a little bit better. Lastly, what I talked with him about was his injury. He actually broke his ring finger midway through the season, and as a long snapper, you need your hands. So I asked him if there was ever any doubt or any anxiety whenever it first happened, and he said there was. He said he was very curious to see how he was going to snap the ball with a broken finger, but they actually stented it, and he was able to snap just fine. Everything was perfect after that, and he said once he figured out he could still do his job to the best of his ability, and it didn't hinder his performance at all, that everything was the same. He did miss a few workouts. Practices were still normal. I asked him how he felt during the workouts that he wasn't able to attend, and in all honesty, he said it was fine. He said that his teammates and everybody else were happy with him, and that he really didn't miss much. It was only maybe a week or two that he missed, and then everything was well there. And lastly, what I want to talk about is his relationship with his coaches and with his teammates. So his relationship with his teammates, he said, was a little iffy. He said that he was really close with some of the seniors and some of the juniors, but not necessarily most of the younger guys. And the team was made up of a lot of younger guys this year. He said, so he felt like it was divided just a little bit between the new guys and the older crowd. He said, but the guys he did have a relationship with was very strong. He also said that his strongest relationships were with the other specialists, so the kickers, punters, holders, snappers on the team, because that's who he spent his whole practice with. So he said that those guys he really felt close to. Everybody else was, a little bit more than a say hey basis, but not much after that. As far as the coaches, he said the head coach was new as his third head coach in his collegiate career, so he didn't know much about him. He said the coach was very relaxed and very laid back. Said he didn't really know much about him, so he couldn't really give me any input about how his relationship was with the coach. So just by going with that, not very strong. Then I asked him about his position coaches as he went through his time here, and he said there was one position coach in general who would take him and some of the players out to eat every once a week, and would genuinely ask about his family and ask about his grades, and he felt really connected to this particular coach. And he said that he wanted to play better for this coach, that he would listen to the coach more intently, and he wanted to know what he had to say to help get him better, because he knew the coach cared about his well-being and about his performance, to where the other coaches, he felt like they were just acting out and just trying to be the tough guys or whatnot. But overall, the interview went very well. What I got out of it was a few things that he could have done a little bit better to help his performance, as far as being able to practice those rituals, pregame rituals before practice. maybe building a stronger bond with his teammates and his coaches. And maybe going to a happy place and not just trying to clear his mind, but having an actual goal and having an actual program to use to clear his mind of anxiety and of things like this. Maybe that would have helped his performance just a little bit. But overall, the athlete did seem pretty confident in his abilities, and he did seem pretty happy with his mental state and his performance. So overall, it was a really good interview. So thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.